If I asked you to pinpoint the absolute origin of breathwork and nervous system regulation, you'd probably point straight to ancient Eastern traditions, right? I mean, that's what we've all been taught. But what if I told you that the earliest map of the human nervous system isn't actually found in a yoga studio at all, but is hidden right inside ancient biblical texts? In today's Explainer, we're excavating the source material to uncover a seriously fascinating argument: the idea that what we call Eastern or New Age somatic practices today might actually be the original biblical blueprint.
So the source material throws out this jaw-dropping historical claim, basically asking, did the East actually invent breathwork, or did they just reverse engineer it? Let's think about the timeline for a second. These texts argue that Abraham was walking and breathing with the divine centuries before the Vedas were ever composed. And Moses, he was fasting in these altered states of total stillness a full millennium before the Yoga Sutras were written. So the goal here isn't to just import Eastern mysticism into Western religion. It's really about recovering what the authors argue is an original, ancient, biblical practice.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, Ruach, the original breathwork.
To really unpack this, we've got to look at the ancient language itself. In biblical Hebrew, you literally cannot separate physical breath from the divine spirit. The word is ruach, and it translates to breath, wind, and spirit, all three at once. The sources emphasize that this isn't just, a lack of vocabulary back in the day. It's actually a profound theological statement. The literal air inflating your lungs right this very second and the Spirit of God, to the ancient mind, those were just different facets of the exact same reality.
And what's wild is that this exact same inseparability carries right over into the Greek New Testament. The word there is pneuma, and it holds that exact same triple meaning: breath, wind, spirit. The sources point out something pretty incredible here. When a resurrected Jesus breathes on his disciples and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit," he is utilizing the exact same physical mechanism, respiratory transmission, that was used all the way back in Genesis. The creation breath and the resurrection breath, functionally identical.
So the text reveals that intentional breathing is basically the original prayer. We're talking long before human language even existed. The author argues that every single inhale you take is quite literally a biological reenactment of Genesis 2:7. And when you think about it, breathing is the only autonomic nervous system function that you can actually consciously seize control of. That's no accident. That is a built-in interface.
Moving on to Section 2, the temple's nervous system.
Okay, here is where modern science accidentally proves the ancient texts right. Look at how brainwave states map perfectly onto these biblical practices. Beta is our normal, stressed-out waking mind. Alpha is kind of the gateway, but theta and gamma, modern neurobiology maps these directly to altered states of receptivity and deep healing. The sources argue that when the prophet Daniel was fasting and lying prostrate waiting for a vision, he wasn't just being religious, he was systematically hacking his own biology to reach a deep theta state.
And the overlap gets even more specific when we look at stress. Today, a clinic will diagnose you with sympathetic overdrive, which is basically a survival state marked by shallow chest-level breathing. Well, thousands of years ago, the Hebrews diagnosed the exact same condition. They called it katsar ruach, which literally translates to shortness of breath. When the Israelites in Exodus couldn't accept freedom, the text says it wasn't because they just lacked faith. No, it was because of their katsar ruach. Their nervous systems were completely dysregulated by trauma. They physically couldn't hear the promise. So how exactly did these ancient mystics hack a dysregulated nervous system? 2 words: the vagus nerve. By deliberately slowing down the breath, especially by extending the exhales, you stimulate this specific nerve. It acts as the body's peace cable. It literally sends a biological signal of safety straight to your brain, pulling you right out of that ancient Katzar rock survival mode and dropping you into a restored state where you can actually process truth.
That brings us to Section 3, Haggah, or the lion's meditation.
Now, if you hear the word meditation and immediately picture sitting cross-legged in total silent emptiness, well, you might want to rethink that. The biblical concept of meditation is actually loud. The Hebrew word is haggah. It means to murmur, to mutter, or even to growl. In fact, the book of Isaiah uses haggah to describe a lion growling over its prey. It's not about emptying the mind, it is a highly active physical, vocal rehearsal. It's literally the act of chewing on a truth until it fully digests into your nervous system.
And this physical practice bleeds seamlessly into the New Testament Greek, with words like melatalo and logizomai. When the text talks about taking every thought captive or setting the mind, it is absolutely not talking about a fleeting mental wish. It is talking about haggah. It's about repeatedly engaging with truth using your vocal cords, your breath, and your sustained focus until that truth literally overwrites your brain's default survival programming.
Let's bring it all together in Section 4, reclaiming the ancient blueprint.
Okay, this next part is perhaps the most mind-bending example in the whole explainer. Let's look at the very name of the divine. The sources point out that the ancient name, YHWH, is comprised entirely of the most unvoiced, aspirated letters in the Hebrew alphabet, meaning it wasn't really meant to be spoken aloud. It was meant to be breathed. By consciously inhaling the YH to receive life and exhaling the WH to surrender it, you transform a basic, involuntary biological reflex into a continuous vagus nerve-stimulating prayer.
And that leads us right into the concept of coherent breathing, a super simple rhythm of a 5.5-second inhale followed by a 5.5-second exhale. If you talk to a cardiologist today, they'll tell you this exact rhythm perfectly synchronizes your heart rate variability. But the source material frames this as the ancient threshold breath. You literally had to use this specific rhythm to calm your survival mind before your body was biologically capable of engaging with deep spiritual texts.
Then, of course, there's box breathing. That's inhaling, holding, exhaling, and holding again, all for 4 seconds each. Now, Navy SEALs use this protocol today for extreme combat stress, but the sources argue that its original ancient purpose was actually to train the Hebrew concept of emunah, which means faith. Think about it. During that breath hold, nothing is moving. You are entirely paused. By choosing not to panic during that lack of oxygen, you are physically teaching your nervous system what faith feels like way before your anxious brain tries to figure it all out.
Ultimately, the argument the text makes here completely reframes how we view ourselves. You are not just some random biological machine housing a trapped consciousness. According to this ancient blueprint, you are the deliberate, precise architecture of a living temple, engineered specifically for divine encounter. These practices aren't some trendy New Age magic tricks. They are ancient somatic technologies designed specifically to wire your nervous system directly to truth.
Which leaves us with an incredibly profound question from the text. What exactly are you rehearsing inside your body when no one else can hear you? Because the ancient blueprint makes one thing crystal clear. Whatever you hog-ah, whatever you mutter, growl over, and breathe deep down into your nervous system, that will eventually become the reality you live in. So, take a deep breath and think about that.